Welcome back. In this, the last of my Q&A videos, I'm going to go through some of the remaining questions which are around the demographics of our practice, some questions about the applicability of a system like this to different sorts of practice, perhaps some smaller ones, as well as some questions about resistance to set up, for example, colleagues who may not be quite so keen to try something different. So, first of all, people wanted to know how big our practice was, how many clinicians we have, just so that you can see, well, it works in my practice, will it work elsewhere? We're a reasonably big practice, 16,000 patients, 6 GP partners, all working about six to 7 sessions a week each. We've got 4 salaried GPs and various other clinicians such as paramedic practitioners, physicians associates and emergency nurse practitioners or advanced nurse practitioners. So we've got quite a varied workforce. So there is certainly a lot to be gained from having a clinician getting the patient in with the right person first time in that situation. That said, it doesn't mean that you couldn't similarly get good benefits from a similar program or a similar system in a smaller practice. So one of the questions was, could this work in a practice with 1 GP, 1 paramedic, 1 ANP? Well, I'm sure it could. I think that you're still going to get efficiencies. We might need to just think about how you would organise it differently. Clearly, you're going to be getting fewer calls per day in a smaller practice of that sort. But it doesn't mean that the patients would be booked in automatically with the right person. So it might be that you'd need to do a little bit more asynchronous sorting. So getting the information into the system either via online triage or via your reception team taking information, and then having blocks of time throughout the day where your clinician spends a short period of time going through and organising where those patients should be best dealt with. In a parallel one, some of the other questions are around, could it work in a much bigger practice or across multiple sites? Well, I can certainly see that that could be very useful. However, there are going to be a number of challenges to put that in place, but I think it's probably worth doing that. So, for example, one of the things we go into is how to set yourselves up to get the information you need about which of your clinicians is best able to deal with which of your problems. And so there's a lot of groundwork that would need to be done to get that working really well across a big practice on multiple sites. But again, that's the sort of thing I think we cover in the training course when we're looking at how you might design the system to work for your practice, rather than thinking that one bolt-on system is going to work the same everywhere, which is never going to work, which is why NHS England's diktats very rarely come out well. So, any other questions there? Did all the clinicians undertake triage training? So we spent time before rolling it out talking about how we were going to manage things, but I think the most important thing is to continue developing and for people to work at the level they're comfortable with and the safety levels that are appropriate for everyone as they go through. So all of us continue to work and to improve. That said, we don't put, for example, a locum into a position where they're triaging because they don't know the systems or the people, and that would not work. So there is a degree of training, but it's a continuous training, I think, that works best. How do you deal with GP follow-up appointments? Well, our GPs are able to book appointments in as appropriate with themselves going forwards. We just ask them to make sure they look at the days they're booking them into to see that they're not going to be too tight for appointments. How do your clinicians feel about someone else triaging their appointments? This would be a big sticking point with our practice. We have no problems with that. We know each other and we trust each other, and I think it's better that the patients are being booked in with some degree of thought rather than being randomly put into any old appointment. So I think any form of clinical assessment and booking is better than none at all. I think, as with all of these things, there's a big communication piece to be done to explain to your team why you want to go down a certain route and get them to design the route with you. Again, this is something that we really go into in great depth in the course because it's vital to get it to work well. Anything else? How you say you have up to 3 weeks in advance. How does this fit with the new contract for 2-week access? Do you think it will have an effect on how the system works? So we talk about how we have a forward view for the next 3 weeks, and that allows us to look at any tight spots or areas where we could forward book patients safely into. Now, I think if the patient is being booked into an appropriate appointment, if they're being booked that far ahead, it's because they're wanting someone specific. I don't think I would have any problem explaining to the powers that be that that's the appropriate and best thing to be doing. However, if we needed to look at the system and putting them on a waiting list so that they then got booked into that appointment later on, I'm sure there's a way around it. We're all very intelligent people and we can make these systems work for our patients and for ourselves. I think that's all that we have questions for today. I really hope that these sets of questions and answers have been helpful. If you do have further questions, consider getting the course. You'll be able to ask any questions you like about how you might implement it. We can go through it together, share the learning with other people, and I really hope that that'll be useful to you. Many thanks.